Good evening from Vietnam, Lara. Thanks a lot for spending your morning to join our Inside Sharing show and share your stories with our listeners around the world. And on behalf of them, I would like to say thank you for doing that, Lara.
My pleasure.
Hey, you've been to our country, you've been to our nearby countries also. So you know our culture, right? So in Vietnam and in Asia, culture is honor for us to have you to introduce a little bit about yourself to our audience. Would you do that for us, please?
Absolutely. My name is Lara Koretsky. I am currently residing in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I am a leadership development expert and a professional certified coach. I'm also the mother of two teenagers. So that makes life very exciting.
Hey Lara, uh, your whole career, your whole has is beautiful, and we want to examine that all together tonight. Earlier I told you that we have a very high admiration for for the people who help leaders to become better, and we want to understand in how that journey takes place for you. So we're gonna travel time together, shall we?
Sounds great. Back to the future. Let's do it.
Alrighty. So when I was young, very young, I wanted to become an astronaut. So wearing the astronaut suit and jumping in a different planet, right? And life did not give me any chance to do what I wanted to do, and not even close. So, Lara, when you were young, what was your dream and aspiration about your future, though?
Mm. Well, I'm very fortunate because my dream was to become a professional actor, and I actually was able to realize that dream. So, from a very young age, I started taking acting classes and dance classes. I got involved in Young People's Theatre, which is a theater, well known theater here in Toronto. I started doing a little bit of television at the time, and then I went to a high school of the performing arts and eventually university to study theater. And when I graduated from university with a theater degree and a minor in psychology, I became a performer for a couple of years. I was a professional actor for a couple of years in Toronto, doing both television and stage.
Wow. So when you were young, why that dream, like happened to you inside of you, Lara?
Yeah, so I was telling a group I was facilitating with last night that really my dream had to do with not being famous, not having the accolades of the flowers. Sure, all of that is great. It had to do with human connection. And I've always been fascinated in human behavior. So actors really need to understand the characters they play. They have to understand motivation. They have to understand how they connect with others and their relationship and why they do what they do. So when I studied theater, I got even more involved in what motivates us as humans and what motivates my character. At the same time, I was studying psychology. So I was studying the pathology behind human behavior, really trying to understand what makes us do what we do. So while it may seem a huge departure right now that I swerved from professional theater into returning to university and getting a human resources degree and spending the last 25 years in human resources and leadership development, it's actually not that much of a departure because, again, it's about human behavior and human behavior in organizations. So, what motivates us to show up in a specific way, and how do we want to show up? So, that was my departure from the theater world and performing into leadership and human development.
Uh, I really interested to understand why did you have that departure 20 years, like 2 decades ago, moving from the acting space and performance space onto the human resource space. Could you
Right.
share with
Well,
us?
there were absolutely there were a couple of reasons. First of all, you can't tell on screen. I'm 4'10", so I tended to get cast a lot playing children's roles. So I loved doing children's theater. I did children's television shows, and at the same time, when I flash forward 20 years, I was like, I can't be 40 years old and still dressing up like a 6 year old. So that was part of my motivation. The other part had to do with the lifestyle. So acting is one of the few professions that is not a meritocracy. You don't continue to grow and develop and then get higher positions, higher or more fully evolved positions. It really is at the whim of the audience, the whim of the directors and the casting agents. I wanted a profession where I could continue to grow and develop and sort of make my mark in the world. And that's why I made that switch.
And how do you feel when you decided to switch from a career that you had a lot of, like loves when you was very, very little onto another career 20 years ago? How did you feel that back then, Lara?
I think when I made that choice, it was a very difficult choice to make. And after I made that choice, I felt very resolved. It felt good. And I was able to apply, like I said, the same skills and behaviors and passion that I had for performing to one-on-one coaching or to a group of leaders or working within the organization. It was a really good choice. I've made lots of choices in my career. None of them are choices that I would look back on and say that was a mistake. I've learned from every single step, and I'm thrilled to be doing what I do today.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing. So even if the departure was not that much in the space between, right? But there's a lot of new skills that you need to obtain, new knowledge that you need to, relearn, unlearn, and relearn again, right? So tell us during that space, during that time, what did how did you do to transfer you from being
Right.
in one space into the next?
I'd say one of the behaviors that I like to display is it's overused, a lifelong learner, that term. I love learning. I love going to school. If I could be a professional student, I would probably be a professional student. I come from a family of educators. I married an educator. It's in my blood. I just love doing it. So I had no problem returning to school. What I was doing at the time was actually I was working in a recruitment firm in an agency and going to night school, going to university in the evenings to get my human resources management degree. And after I did that, I continued to follow that journey, professional degrees or designations or workshops in learning and development and training, and eventually moving into the coaching world and getting my credentials in coaching and studying individual coaching and then team coaching and then different types of coaching.
Since you mentioned about your husband was an educator, you grew up in the family also in educations, right? So I'm curious about in your website you say you and your husband met at a Halloween event and you married after that. You tell us how that occasion happened before we move
How
forward.
do I mean? Okay, you want the real story, the real dirt. So the real dirt. My favorite holidays, not surprisingly, being an actor. I love dressing up. I love getting into character. I was really excited to go out for Halloween, and I had a boyfriend at the time, and we got into a big fight, and he went to one bar, and I said, I'm not going to that one. I'm going to another one. This was in university. And as I was standing in line at another bar with a friend, there was this guy behind me. There were two guys, and they were fully dressed up as dogs, full makeup on, floppy ears, full suits. It was a long lineup, about an hour or two to get in. And the guy behind me was engaging and he was funny and he was bright. And we developed a friendship. And as it turns out, we ended up becoming good friends first, which I think is a great a base for a relationship. And we started dating a couple of years after our friendship began. And I guess you could say the rest is history. We just celebrated our, oh, I'm going to get this wrong, our 20th anniversary.
Oh, congratulations on the
Thank
anniversary,
you.
20th anniversary. So he was with you doing the transition from the performing art onto the human
Yes.
resource space also. What
Mhm.
play did he, what role did he play in that space with you?
I'm very lucky in that I have a very supportive partner. And
Wow.
my most recent transition, when I left, working for someone and developing my own organization, my own company, again, it was the same type of support that he displayed 25 years ago when I made that transition.
Wow. Beautiful, beautiful. Tell him that we say hello, and
I
it's
will.
been 17, 18 years since you guys haven't back to Vietnam yet. So please extend our invitation if you and he and your two teenager, children, if travel to Vietnam, then you have a new friend, new family here. So we will be so
I
happy
love
to
that.
to meet you guys around town. Okay.
Thank you.
That's so
That would be great.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And especially going to my hometown, Da Nang City. I really, really love bring people to my hometown.
We
Yeah.
would love to revisit. And we went to one of the best restaurants I've ever been to in my entire life in Hoi An. And I
Wow.
remember that 17 years later.
I'll connect with you separately on that, and I'll ask you, what's the
Okay.
restaurant's name, and I'll come and talk to the owner and say I spoke to Lara, and she say your restaurant is one of the best restaurants in Hoi An. So well,
Fabulous.
so Lara, from the space of the performing art, you move into the recruitment, do the day job and do the evening, spend the evening for the school, right? And then you went through a career phenomenally growth in the space of human resource, become in the executive role, and then move again. So we want to examine that journey before before the transformation. Okay, tell us what makes you so successful in that career growth in human resource, Lara?
I think it's been the steps along the way, having strong supporters, connecting with people, and ensuring that everywhere I am, checking in with myself. How do I want to show up? Am I giving my full value? And am I deriving value? And when I am not giving full value or deriving full value, I need to examine what's going on and to make choices to ensure that I can offer more and receive more. And at the same time, if I can't do that within the current organization, ensure that I have built a great succession plan for someone else to take over and then learn somewhere else. That's always been the journey, and very fortunate to have supportive organizations that I've worked for, wonderful bosses and colleagues. And some of the people that I have worked with in the past are the closest friends that I have today.
For sharing, which means that you've been able to find out the purpose, your life values, and then you work around, you find organization that can help you to excel in that space. In like let you to do what you want to do and in line with your core values. I want to know how did you know that 20 years ago? Can you share with us?
I didn't know 20 years ago. I don't know what tomorrow is going to look like. I think that's part of the beauty. I enjoy spontaneity. I love seeing what's going to happen around the corner. And at the same time, as you said, really holding true to my values. So knowing what's important to me in my life and as I move through my career, and ensuring that I'm working within or with organizations that resonate with my own values and that I can learn from. So I can learn from you and I can offer to you. So my journey has taken me from recruiting firms to a toy company, software design, which I loved, a design and architecture company and consulting firm, eventually going into education, and then opening up my own business that's all geared towards leadership and coaching.
We're gonna go into the space where you transform it, then doing your own business at a
Mhm.
different time later in the conversation. Okay, I'm still interested to know the journey that you start everything from human
Sure.
resources. So because finding the value is very very hard. A lot of people now living and working like in darkness. Let's put it that way. They go to the work and they don't know what they want to do. They don't know what the values that they are, and like holding and living for. And so you've been able to figure it out, and then also find companies that can help you to hone it also, and then you can add values in return in that environment. So how can we help the people to find what the values that for their life is, Lara?
Yeah, so typically what I do when I'm working with my clients is an exercise that I do myself. So I really examine the high points in my career and what was happening during those high points. Where was I? Who was I surrounded by? What was occurring? What emotions came up? What values resonated with me? What accomplishments happened? And conversely, looking at the low points. When were the dark moments? When did I feel most in darkness? What was occurring then? And by mapping that out, I'm able to extract what's important to me. So I know that connection is really important to me. Every time I think about the highlights of my career, I was with others. I was connecting with others. I was offering to others. That's really important to me. The work I do, it has to be about helping others to show up in their best light, offering to others as well, feeling strong and confident. So by going through an exercise like that or an examination, journaling is another way that I reflect backwards and I look, oh, I could see what happened then. So it's like my own little time machine in a small book. And I really encourage others to do that. And I know that I'm only as good as my word is only as good as what I do myself. So you learn by doing. If I'm going to offer that recommendation to others, I need to practice it myself.
Your life, you always pursued of what you want to do really inside of you. When you were young, you wanted to
Mhm.
be perform, right? So you pursued the whole life into the career performance, and then when you found out that you want to be in the human resource space, you go all in and make yourself successful in that space. So where did you find the strength and the discipline to go in that direction that your heart telling you?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I could say I'm tenacious. Some may say I'm stubborn. I have learned throughout my life that when you have a specific goal, you need to be flexible around it. So things may change. And if I stay in that space of what does that goal actually give me or give others, then I feel I can achieve the goal. So in my past, I've dealt like many others. I've dealt with, struggles, low points in my life. Personally, I've had a couple of serious illnesses, and I've learned a lot through those experiences about what's important to me, what I want to hold on to, and what I need to let go of. So it's not necessarily the position or the title. That's not what's important to me. What's important to me is the environment and how I show up. And so I think those skills that has taught me, and also I have to credit the people along the journey that came along the journey with me. My parents have always been very supportive, and my father always said to me, life's not easy. If you know that, then you can get the most out of it, and it's true. And my mother always taught me that there will be high points and low points, and to really experience everything, because joy, which is one of my main values, something I pursue in life, professionally, personally, you can't experience joy if you haven't experienced hardship. You can't appreciate joy if you haven't experienced other moments. So really getting a lot out of those other moments. And that has helped me not be single focused, but adapt and flex as long as I'm sticking true to that larger goal.
Beautiful, beautiful. You say your parents educated. So what did they do in the space of education?
So my father was an English professor at a university here in Toronto. And my mother actually worked at the university as well. Her career was she was an editor, a book editor, and then she stayed at home raising us as children. And then she returned to the editing space within a university.
Wow, tell them that we say hello with you, right?
Thank
Hey, Lara, uh, I note down the word here, let go, all right? Because
you.
it's really, really hard for a lot of people to let go of things that they've been, holding dear in their lives, right? Even if it's wrong, even that is something that
Mhm.
needs to change. So you said along the journey that you've been, you adapt a new thing and let go of things that unhealthy, unhelpful. How did you figure out what is not helpful for you and let them go though?
Well, that's been a 50-year journey, and I continue to work on that. Uh, like many, I can ruminate. So I think that what we often do as human beings, we are creatures of judgment. We judge ourselves, we judge others, we judge the situation. And there's a big difference between judgment and discernment. So the important piece is to be able to discern, to understand what has played out, to understand our behaviors, and to learn from that. So, what is the gift or opportunity that I can derive from my actions? Although I'm not proud of my actions or I wish I could do a redo, what can I actually learn instead of replaying that tape over and over again in my head? So, letting go of the judgment and moving more swiftly into the gift or the opportunity. I think the key is being able to identify when you're in that mindset. So, quickly noticing, oh, I'm in judgment right now, or I have another saboteur, that hyperachiever, that perfectionist voice that's telling me I need to get better or better. Use that as a warning sign. Something's not right here, and then move into, what can I learn from this? What is the opportunity? What is right?
Wow, Lara, you said the word identifying here, right? And but it's inside of our head. Is we cannot see it. So how can we build the inner mechanism that can help us to recognize that,
Yeah,
and so that we can make the switch though.
absolutely. So I have a really vivid imagination. I can see all types of characters in my head. And I think it's important to actually tap into that creativity or imagination that we all had as children. So, identifying what some of these voices may be. So, we know the perfectionist tendency that many people have. We know that there's a controller tendency that some of us may have, or that type A achievement personality, or the victim. There are many different types of voices. So, by being able to actually give it character the way we do as actors, giving it voice, that can help us to identify. So, I invite people to get creative
Sorry,
with it.
Lara, sorry, I got the internet disruption. We had
Oh,
a storm
okay.
last night. Can you
Oh
still
no,
hear me?
I can hear you now.
Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Can you say? Yeah, I can hear you. Can you say it again? But back in the when you said about you have a vivid memories and you
Imagination.
imagination. Yeah, can you say it again?
Sure. So I have a very vivid imagination with all these voices in my head, and at other times I think that everyone, all of us, have had that imagination. So it's going back into our past and tapping into that 5-year-old self. What did we think when we were 5? What stories did we make up? What characters did we make up? And then applying that lens to our current situation. So we can actually apply characters to the voices in our head. And I don't mean that in a pathological sense. I'm not talking about anything that might have to do with a mental health issue. I'm talking about those voices that we all encounter, those voices of judgment or perfectionism or being a victim, and applying, giving them names, identifying them, so that when we do hear phrases in our head like, I could have done that better, I should have done this, that wasn't good enough, that's the voice of the perfectionist. What can I learn from this instead?
Wow, Lara, when you were young, you had the art side inside of you. So the world of creativity and imaginations and yeah. So it's all inside of you. There's a lot of people don't have that capability, and they
Hmm.
always come to me and say, "Oh, I'm I'm not that creative. I'm not that imaginative." And so, how can we teach them to build that?
Yeah.
Like you say, build the ability to name things, name the feelings, like that,
Hmm.
Lara.
Hmm. Well, absolutely. It's part of my family. My brother's a mathematician. I work with accountants and financial experts and people, engineers who say, no, I'm not creative. I do believe that all the time we are problem solving. And to be able to problem solve, we need to lend a certain amount of curiosity and creativity to the challenges in front of us. So if that doesn't resonate with you, I'm not going to make up characters or names. Absolutely. What we need to do is be able to identify ways that do resonate with you. So if I'm working with a client that says, that's not for me, sometimes we might look at our common phraseology, some of the things that we often say to ourselves, and use those phrases to identify, that's our warning sign. So that wasn't good enough. Or why did she do that? So those voices of self judgment or outer judgment. Okay, now you know you're going into that space. What can you extract from that space? What can you learn? What is your next step?
Wow, thanks for sharing that advice. Now I want to move into the next transition in your career. All right.
Hmm.
And I want to say first, congratulate you because you decided to go on your own, create the company that you can support people in the Lara ways, right? The Lara's way. And I want to ask you, what courage did you give you back then to leave all the comfortability in the corporate world, in the private, in the works that you do, and decided to go on to the widening world and dark and scary world to do to go on your own, Lara.
Yes. Well, again, that was a choice that I wrestled with for quite a bit, and then once I made the choice, I felt very resolved. So, what led me to make that choice? I had always envisioned that I would go into consulting at some point in my career. And I had a number in my head. When I turn 55, when I turn, you know, 47, whatever it was, that's when I'm going to do it. And then, of course, the world changed in March of 2020. I was working in education. I worked at a wonderful organization, and I was the VP of people and culture there. And all of our lives changed. And my responsibilities changed as well. Whereas I was really tapping into leadership development and people development and organizational behavior, I had to switch gears quite quickly, like so many others, and really my sole responsibility was COVID response for the organization, and that was really, really important at the time, and of strong value. And as the time wore on, I knew what I was missing, and I knew that there was still a space and a need for that. It just wasn't aligned with what the organization needed at the time. So, after many months of thinking about it, I made that decision that I wasn't going to wait for that magic number anymore. There's never a perfect time. It's like having kids, you're never really prepared. you just do it. And I gave my notice in March of that year and left in July. I think the other important piece to note and to be really open about was I was also experiencing burnout myself. So I had some physical issues. I was diagnosed with a lung issue at the same time that COVID came about. Timing is everything. My physical being was suffering. It was impacting my emotional state. I was exhausted. I was tired. I was less engaged and enthusiastic about the work I was doing than I had been. And that's always been really important for me. So noticing those signs of burnout and taking a step back to say, what's happening right now and where do I need to apply myself? So all of those factors played in, and that's how I came up with that hard and right decision.
Lara, so a little bit of promotion here. So if people listening to this conversation and they would love to go into a change process and with you, so what is that you will help them to grow? So can you share so they will know?
Yeah, absolutely. So I often work with individuals one-on-one or executive teams, leadership teams, organizations when they are going through change or wanting change. So feeling stuck. And we really look at where are you stuck? What's having you stuck? And re-examining, as Brene Brown would say, the stories we're telling ourselves. What are the stories you are telling yourself, either as an individual or as a system, as an organization? And what do you most want and need? How does that resonate with your personal values, your journey, your abilities, and figuring out what that gap is and helping people to plot themselves through the gap. So much of the work I do with individuals and organizations is about change, and it's about communication. So first that self-awareness piece, and then how do you communicate it outwardly to others? As a leader, how do you show up and communicate to your team, to your peers, to your organization?
And that is something that is a one thing that a lot of leaders need to relearn and and readjust these days, right? So what happened with us, all the leaders over the years, that we didn't see all this change coming, Lara?
Mm-hmm. So can you tell me a little bit more about your question? We didn't see the change coming.
Yeah, like you help them to change, right? Because be more of themselves and communicate with people and stuff, right? So that they can unstuck themselves and go to the next level, right? And change is very scary also for a lot of people, and
Mm-hmm.
because of that we don't want to change, right? So you get into that space and help leaders to really step up. So my question was, why didn't they step up at the beginning and need help from the external person like you?
Yeah. Well, I think you said it yourself. Change can be
Ah,
scary. And we all need that thought partner. We all need someone to reflect back to us what we're saying and thinking and hearing. I myself have a coach. I think it's really important as a practicing coach to have a coach as well and to be able to hold up that mirror. This is what I'm hearing you say right now. So a coach can help you, whether again it's one-on-one or as a team. They can help you summarize. They can extract and pull themes together. They can help you hear differently. We don't always video. We don't always tape what we're saying and then play it back, nor should we. Think of that coach as that partner next to you who is able to identify that and hold the mirror back up. And so through that experience, that can help you have that light bulb moment. Ah, that's where I'm getting stuck. Or it's fear that's holding me back. Or it's other commitments I have in my life. And identifying what you need to prioritize in your life. because it may all in our heads be a bit of a mess right now, and you just feel a bit stuck. So you need someone to help pull those pieces apart for you.
Lara, you've been in the space for human resources for many, many years, and you've been working
Mm-hmm.
with a lot of leaders. Now you're helping them to unstuck, right, and go to the next level. My question is, um, what is common things that people need help to unstuck with when they come to you?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. I think what I find in terms of commonalities are fear. What's holding you back? Sometimes we know what our next steps what we want our next steps to be. It feels like we're on the precipice of a big cliff and we're not sure if we're going to fall or if we're going to soar. So understanding and helping people identify what might be the small step to get unstuck, to make that bigger journey. I think another commonality I find are feeling stuck in relationships. So relationships with others, it could be as a leader, it could be their teams, it could be with one individual, it could be with the organization. So feeling stuck in terms of I'm not showing up the way I want to, or this relationship isn't quite right. Or as leaders on a more strategic level, thinking about the future and the future landscape and where the organization needs to go and not being sure what that pathway looks like. And I think in the last couple of years, due to the pandemic, we've all learned how resilient we are, how adaptable we can be, how we all feel stuck at times, and that sometimes we are pushed to change and pushed to move, and we can do that.
Ah, beautiful. I have two last questions for our conversation tonight. All right. And Lara, that first question start with the word that you repeatedly just say, think. All right. So my wife and I, we have been on the quest to help people to improve their ability to think, because we believe that our ability to think these days is diminishing, it's not increasing at all. So every chance that we talk to expert like you, the person that have been, people to think and then to excel, right? Lara, how have you been helping you to expand your ability to think over the years though?
Mm. Well, I think it goes in tandem with feel. So thinking and feeling, I never want to diminish that feeling side of things. So, sometimes we feel stuck or we feel frustrated or we feel joyous. It's noticing those emotions and then being able to think about those emotions, thinking of those emotions as warning signs if they're negative emotions, thinking of those emotions as positive and signals for what's important in our lives. So noticing emotions and feelings and then thinking about that is important without ruminating, without overthinking. So that's part of it. And I also, as I said earlier, I have a thirst for knowledge. I love reading up on things and attending webinars and going to courses and learning more. So I think as humans, one of the greatest gifts is just to listen to others, to extract knowledge from others, and to be curious about what others are thinking so we can be curious about our own thought patterns.
Wow. And Lara, so, so with that thing that you just say, the curious about others, right?
Mm.
We're gonna lead to the last question. So we knew a young version of Lara really, really want to be in the performing, then she did go into the performing space. We knew that she also very curious and really pay attention and listen to others. That's why she paid attention to the guy behind her at the Halloween party. And then
That's right.
who became friend and eventually married to him, right? And travel the world beautifully. And
Mhm.
you listen to your feelings, that like you say, you give feelings a name, you listen to it, and then you extract from it. So thinking from the feelings, thinking from the thinking, so that you transfer to the space of doing your own works now. I want to lead into the future a little bit, so let's lean to the future. Is there anything that exciting that Lara is working on and Lara wants to share with our audience so we can celebrate with Lara in advance?
Absolutely. There's so much that I am looking forward to and that is exciting. I'm really delving into work with organizations now about reconnecting. So I dare anyone right now to pull out an article on leadership skills in the 21st century that does not mention empathy, emotional intelligence, communication, those skills that we used to refer to as soft skills, which I refer to as essential skills. That's what we need to get back to. So how do we reconnect after so many years of being disconnected? Not just through the pandemic, through what we've been told and taught is the leadership skill that we need to display at work. So what I'm excited about is working, again, one-on-one with leaders in organizations, and then working with organizations as a whole on reconnecting and showing up in that leadership space. So I've got a lot of work coming up in the next 2-3 months, working with organizations on reconnecting, communication skills, competencies, emotional intelligence, those pieces. And I think on a personal level, I'm looking forward to reconnecting and traveling again, which I haven't done in a bit. I've got an upcoming trip to Europe in December, and learning again, taking that as an opportunity to learn about other cultures, to learn about other people, and adapting some of those beautiful cultures back when I return to Canada.
Wow, Lara, thanks a lot for sharing that. And I think that when we were young, we really good at connecting with people. And that makes us really friendly to one another, really care for one another. Somehow along the life, the life that growing up, things got broken. And I think now is a time for us to, around the world, we reconnect back to to the very basics, like essential skill, like you were saying, but in a different level, so that we can, be a better human, connecting back to the people and creating something that nice for the people, right?
Yeah.
And I wish you having all the resources, that all the supports that can help you to accomplish that and deliver it well, and enjoy the learning and traveling trip to Europe, and be safe. I'm sorry.
Bless
I'm
you.
having a rhythm. Thank you.
Oh
So
no.
and I know, and I'm thankful for you to spend your morning to join our program and sharing your stories. It's amazing. Please tell your husband that we invite him, you, and your children to come to Vietnam the next time that you plan to travel to this part of the world. Okay?
Likewise. And what's so unusual for me is it's been focused on me. I'm so curious about you. So I want to flip the table at some point and spend an hour just listening to your story. I want to ask the questions. I'm really curious. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for this opportunity to get to know you better, to share my story, and to connect.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to connect. And I want to meet you and your family in person one day.
Yes, absolutely.
Lara, bye-bye for now, and I wish you have a wonderful day. Enjoy the day.
Thank you.
There,
and a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye for now, all right?
Bye. Thank you.